let me start by offering this disclaimer. I'm not doing this video to analyze Henrietta's story. I don't know her. I don't know her husband. I've seen the reactions from different quarters. I've seen her diary stuff. But this video is designed to help us that are still alive to understand some things that we need to unlearn as women and things we need to unlearn because our daughters are watching us. All right? So my intention is to highlight things that we could all benefit from. So whether it is you, the woman that is going through it, or your daughter is watching you go through it, or you're preparing your daughter what to do. I've identified 13 things that we're doing wrong, but in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 of them. I want to do this as a series, and then I'll keep on, I'll build on it. Like every day, I'll drop 3 or so. So first, I want to talk about the first mistake we're making is something I call weaponized kindness. We raise girls telling them to be kind at their expense most of the time. In fact, we teach be kind, end of story. We don't remind her about her well-being. We don't remind her about watching whether who you're kind to is reciprocating, which means you could be kind. If the person is not reciprocating, you withdraw it and stay on your own without having any bitterness. So we teach girls to be kind at all costs. Unfortunately, we teach boys to receive kindness and not give it. We teach boys to look out for girls that would serve them. We don't teach boys how to reciprocate that service, how to reciprocate that kindness. So that's the first error. That's the first mistake we're making. So I'm teaching my daughters to be kind, but I'm teaching them to read the room for when kindness is not reciprocated. The second thing on my list is raising girls whose self-esteem is hinged on a boy liking them or loving them. Let me explain what that means. While growing up, if a guy and a girl broke up, people make fun of the girl for the guy leaving her. It never occurred to people that she has dignity and she could have been the one that didn't want him. So you'd usually hear things like he dumped her. And then if the guy left her and started dating someone else, the new girl became the trophy. Both of those girls are crazy. Because who made the guy the superstar to decide which of you was worth it or not? So we have to go back to teaching our daughters that you're not here to be picked by a man. In order to date a guy, you have to decide that you want him. It's not about he liked you, he's asking you, what about you? Do you like him? Do you like his values? Do you like, the opinion of the girl is up for debate as well. It's up to be spoken about. So what do you think about these first 2? I'll do subsequent videos. I want to keep it short and sweet. Let me hear weaponized kindness and the pick me mentality. Number 3, we teach girls about accepting proposals but not reviewing alignment. Let me explain what that means. It's just big grammar to say when your sister brought a guy to you, most of the time you ask, do you like him? What does he do? And you end there. If she likes him and he has money, that's all. But we're not talking about alignment. So let me tell you what happened to me today. So my first daughter is 14 and we have a lot of conversations. And so today in the morning and this afternoon, she came and met me and said, let's talk. So, I designed a framework called Relationship Funnel. It's a pin post on my profile that talks about all the things girls should look out for before they finally say they're falling in love. So my daughter said, what if a guy goes through all the funnel, but when you guys were dating, he made time for you and all of a sudden, he gets this business. Business is moving him a lot out of town. He's traveling a lot. He's not making time for you. Does that take him out of the funnel? She was waiting for me to say yes or no. And I looked at her and said, well, it depends on you and your priorities. You have to determine the kind of future, marriage, and parenting you want to do and determine whether his model of work is a fit for that. So some things are not right or wrong. It's about what you desire. Now, before a girl is married, it's important for her to have a picture of what she wants her marriage to look like and what she wants her parenting to look like. So that when a guy is asking her out, beyond the fact that he likes her, she likes him, he looks good, he earns well, she can decide whether he's aligned to the kind of future she desires. Did you know girls are supposed to think about that? It's not just guys that think about it and see what girl fits in the frame. Girls are supposed to sit down and think about that. So for example, I had this vision that any guy that I'm going to get married to had to teach me about God. And I was a God chaser. I was in love with God. God was my everything. But that was my own focus. He had to love God enough for me to be able to listen to him talk about God. I also wanted to marry someone that could teach me, that could talk, and I'd listen. Incidentally, at the time, I didn't have this insight. But looking back, that's what I'm saying. Have your daughters have a dream of the kind of life they want to lead, so that when they meet guys, they can actually determine whether the guy is also a fit for it or not. The next thing I want to talk about, another error we're making, which is error number 4, is that we somehow have girls thinking that when one person doesn't like them, it means they're unlovable. So we dwell, right? We dwell on issues. And these things don't start with boy, girl. It starts with girl, girl. You need to teach your daughters that when one person doesn't like you, it can be personality clash, can be context, can be misinformation. It doesn't mean you're unlovable. I don't know why that girl kept waiting for that guy to love her back. Number 5, we make girls who are heavy, maybe that chubby and big, think that they can't meet first class guys. And when I say first class guys, guys that are crazy about them, that love them, that adore them. So we body shame girls to think that if they are on the heavy side and a guy likes them, they're lucky. Sometimes this is the way we teach them that. Other people's stories. You watch a video, a big size girl is marrying a girl. She says, oh, she's so lucky. The guy didn't go for slim, liked her. So you make it a privilege. They hear it long enough, they start to think that the options for them is slim. I'm not saying that's Henrietta's case. I'm just doing like a general overview of different things that could have been going on. So we make them think that they're not beautiful because they're not slim. We need to change that. We also shame girls with age. So age and weight, making girls as they get older to think that they're unworthy. But unfortunately, we're not doing that to guys. It's very recently that people like, some relationship coaches that are saying if you meet a guy, he's in his 40s, early 50s, never been married, is a disaster. It's now we are talking about it. It's always been about the girl. There's always been that thing that anytime a guy is ready, there'll be a woman to marry her. But we're not doing that for girls. And so that creates a shortage mentality. That creates a scarcity mentality, allowing them endure what they shouldn't. Because somewhere in their head, they're feeling like if I walk away from this marriage, who's going to take me in? Which brings me to the other part of telling you that you should teach your daughters how to be their own love. How to be that person that loves themselves, that looks out for themselves, and would rather be by themselves than with someone that mistreats them. The next thing I want to talk about is we don't talk to girls about holistic evaluation of guys. Let me explain what I mean by that. In one of my previous videos on this series, I talked about once a guy likes her, fine, has money, we're good. But no, I'm talking about detailed analysis. People's childhood, family dynamics. Are their parents together? How do they resolve conflict in their home? Is this person going to be a communicating person? What did his father model to him? Now, see, our grandparents wanted us to ask those questions, but they didn't word it right. So we thought it was all about love. Now we are writing down in the middle of love and saying that, whoa, love doesn't have the fiber to keep it together. So we need to turn around and look at our girls and say, pay attention. Some guys are heavily traumatized and they're hiding it behind all kinds of scriptures, all kinds of cultural beliefs, all kinds of stuff. And your daughter is thinking that she loves them. Na so in day. So you have to step back and tell your daughter we are going to analyze him holistically. How he was raised, who he was raised, the culture around the time and whom he was raised in. Today, I want to dedicate this particular video entirely to the concept of marrying up or marrying down. Is a concept or conversation I'd rather not have, but we have to talk about it because a big part of Henrietta's story is around marrying up or down. I would really like to come here and tell you that it really doesn't matter whether you're marrying up or down. It's about the person. Unfortunately, I'll be a hypocrite if I said that, and I'll tell you why. So, personal family story, my grandmother. My grandmother was an amazing, amazing woman. When I met her, when I was born, we see the way they talk. When I met her, when I was born, she was one of the most educated old women I met around my childhood. Used to speak Scottish English. She was a nurse, trained as a midwife by the colonialists and all of that. So she was a creme de la creme. Do you understand? And then she gets to church and falls in love with a preacher boy who had not finished primary school. And so in her mind, they were going to build together. So let's say that my perspective today is colored by my grandmother's experience. Now, in the way I witnessed their marriage, it was no marriage at all. He was out there with girls. And later on, as I went older, I found he saw my grandmother came from such a structured home. My grandmother, if you're Efik, my grandmother was in Amity. They're a big deal in a way. And so he was always insecure. So guess what? Not holding out for him, he went out looking for girls who he was a hero to, because he assumed that my grandmother did not authentically or honestly honor him, or would not have any reason to respect him. So it means that when anyone wants to marry up and down, they need to pay attention to the real dynamics of insecurity. I'll show you 2 ways. I once met an amazing woman, schooled in the UK, came back to Nigeria, got married to this guy, and girl was used to some comfort. It wasn't anything extra. But this guy was a struggling guy that had built a lot. I think he worked in banking also. He had built a lot to one point. So there were things that he was, maybe while he was building, he said they should make certain sacrifices. But around that time, those were sacrifices that were basics for her. And so when she tried to meet her need by herself, it became a problem for them. And it ended with domestic violence. So you see, when we're on social media, they tell you things that, oh, when you meet someone, he's lower than where you are, you marry up. So the girl marries him. Or, you know, they make it look as if some fantasy. We need to shake off that fantasy and sit in the reality, say, what is it with marrying up and down? What are questions people need to answer? What are realities people need to face? Forget the fairy tale fantasy that is out there. The insecurity both ways is real. The next part I want to talk about is this error of, number one, underestimating what it takes for somebody to change. So a girl meets a guy, has a drinking problem, has a woman problem, and the mother says, if you love him well, he's going to stay. You guys mixed? Are you guys high on something? Do you know what it takes for a human being to change behavior? So don't go too far. Let me come back to you. Are there things they were talking to you about in your childhood that your spouse is still talking about today? That's how complex changing behavior is. If you want, go and sit with a therapist. Let them tell you the unlearning and the possible crazy processes that needs to go into you for you to change. So you know what we do when we tell girls that when they love men, right, they'll change. What we are doing is thinking that the man is a switch she can turn on and off. But at the same time, we are misappropriating what the responsibility of a woman is in the life of a man. She's not a therapist. She's to build with him. So picture it, a guy, this is something I talk to my daughters about. And especially my first, she said, okay, if a guy has an anger problem, what is it? I said, if a guy has an anger problem, you want to see the responsibility he's taking for it. Is he reading books? Is he going for counseling? What is he doing? And something my husband will always say is, does he have a vision of himself where he doesn't want to see himself in a particular light? He doesn't want to see himself doing certain things, and he's committed to that vision. I remember one time I asked my husband a question. We're having one boy like that was following him was seriously misbehaving. And so when I asked him, I said, what if this guy runs into you somewhere and breaks into a fight, something like that? He said he would run. I said, people, wouldn't that be cowardice? He said, no, I have my reputation to protect. He asked me a question and said, if I fought with him and news broke, what would the news say? They would say, Kingsley Bangwell fight a young person. He said, my name has something to it, and I must back it up. So do you know when you're looking at a man that has a behavior problem, you want to see the pattern and the responsibility he's taking, but you also want to see the vision he has of himself. You want to see how he sees himself, how he wants to come across to the world. And that is what compels you to be a part of his life as all of those adjustments happen. In my next video, I'm going to say a question my daughter asked me about dating someone who is an ex-convict and how to navigate that. See, why I'm doing this video is because I know I don't need anyone to tell me. I have wild conversations at home with my daughters, the most vulnerable conversations, because here's the thing. If you're not going to have it at home, they're going to leave your home ill-prepared for the journey of what it means to be a woman. I promise you. So just today again, my daughter was talking to me about what if you're dating someone and they held back information about themselves, and then later you found out. So I said, give me a heads up. It depends on the information they kept away from you. She asked me, what if the guy was sexually abused? I said that that information he has to be ready to share with you. And you have to sit with him because it's going to trigger a lot of things. So you want to calm down and have him speak to you when he's ready. However, be careful if he has an avoidant mentality about talking about experiences. It doesn't allow you quite measure the impact of those experiences on them and how those things may have shaped their beliefs, their values, and so on and so forth. So sitting down to talk with someone gets you to listen to where they've gone to with these experiences. This is very critical because you also have to teach your girls how to listen beyond feeling. So if they date and they're touching and kissing, they can't think through things. They can't be logical anymore. Something is at stake. So the second circumstance my daughter presented to me said, what if this guy has a kid and they kept it away from you? I said, depending on where you guys are. So you need to ask him what's the modus operandi with the child and the mother of the child. And she wanted to attempt to dismiss it. So I told her the story that broke just 2 days ago, where a woman went to pick her son in school and her ex's chick killed her in that school. I said, be careful about getting into muddled up relationships. Find out whether the woman involved has self-respect. Pay attention to the guy that you're with, whether that guy has self-respect. Where self-respect is served, that woman is just a victim that, oh, she had a kid and they couldn't be together. You don't need to become her enemy, but you have to be careful that you don't get into an entanglement where he's still into her and you're now the extra or the one that made it not possible. But also be careful about baby mamas that come out of date. You were dating this person and that happened. You don't need to be a hero. Pick your bag, come back home, and let's talk about that later. I had this conversation because you've seen the different scenarios and you can already see mistakes. So let me land on the ex-convict. My daughter said, what if he was in prison and he was falsely accused? I say, baby girl, ask for the story. What if he was in prison for a murder, but he was falsely accused because he has history in it? So this crime, he didn't commit. But what about historically? I'm doing that so that girls turn on their thinking brain and lower the feeling one. Back to my mistake series, all right? One of the mistakes we're making is raising girls that have eroded self-esteem. And for me, I have a framework for teaching self-esteem. It means we're raising our girls to be self-aware. And self-awareness means the child knows herself. They know their personality, they know their temperament, they know their learning styles, they know their strength, they know their weaknesses, they know their influences, they know what they're susceptible to, they know they're emotionally intelligent. So that's the first part. They know that part. Then the next part is self-acceptance. They recognize that they're different from other people and that other people have strengths they don't have and they have strength other people don't have. And then the third pillar is that they have a lot of self-respect for themselves, which means they have a way they talk, think, and act towards themselves. The way they think about themselves, the way they talk to themselves, the way they act towards themselves. Why is this important? Because when girls get into a situation where somebody makes them feel like they're not worth it, the one thing they have to fall back to is what they know about themselves. It's not calling up a friend to start telling you that you're amazing or you're awesome. Your daughters should leave home with the conviction that they're worth it. So when they meet someone, they need to know, no, oh, he likes girls that party. I'm not a partying girl, and that's okay. I don't need to be her. I mean, we watched a celebrity in this country that we all admire as women. Not we all, that we really celebrated because she was dogged. She is still dogged, has such work ethics, very successful vlogger. Her husband at the time started having an affair that started making her question her worth. So go back home and build girls who know that when guys walk or cheat, it's not because you're not worthy. Sometimes you're too excellent for the mediocrity he wants to perpetuate. So you don't want your daughter, who is in her state of honor, state of self-respect, to think that a woman that is irresponsible, sleeping all over the place, is her competition. You don't do that. So you raise your daughters to know themselves. And so if a guy says, so for example, I told my daughter recently, I said, I want you to know, my first daughter, if I want to brainstorm and create an idea, like they say, Yarin, you're writing a book with one of your kids, is my first daughter. She's such a thinking, deep person. I told her this week, I said, some guys are not going to find you fun, so you have to get ready for it. You're a person of depth. You're not shallow. You think about things very critically, and you withdraw when people are not giving you what you expect. So you're not going to be considered as fun. But here's the thing. I want you to own it, because for the right person, you're the exact spec. Now, that's not to say she doesn't have fun and all of that, but she's just someone that she thinks about things a little bit further. That's what it means to raise your daughters with self-esteem before they leave home. So the next the next mistake we're making is this business of bringing in God and submission and all of that. The Bible says we submit in the Lord, you know. So does it mean that if your husband is destructive, does that still mean submission? And at what context do we start talking to our girls about submission? So this is my theory around teaching my daughters about submission. And it follows the principle that the late Pastor Bimbo Dukoya was teaching many years ago before I got into university. She used to tell people to put respect before love, feelings of love. That you should only date a man that you had respect for, a man that earned your respect. And respect came from you watched the choices, the pattern, his character, his decision making, and you esteemed it, you trusted his judgment. When you date that kind of man, you marry them, it's easy to submit to them because you're like, he knows what he's doing. Now, usually the problem is that many girls date at random, guys that are not thinking through their choices, haphazard. Some of them, while dating, the girl is the one doing all the managing, the organizing, they're a little bit scattered, and then they're now married. You now tell her that she should submit to him. Now, she already has a problem with his decision making, and that can be a big problem. So I teach my girls to look for guys whose judgment they can trust first. Guys who hear God, guys who follow God, because he will not always know what to do. But where is he surrounded by influences that can put him on track? Is he submissive to the Holy Spirit? Does he have mentors he goes to talk to? When your daughter finds a man with that structure of accountability, submitting is a natural flow. Did you see what I did there? So this submission that we preach blanket, which is purely is Bible, would only be easy if we do something before our daughters commit, so that they make sure they're committing to the right people whose judgment they trust. You get the idea? So what am I saying in essence? I'm saying that we are misusing God's word to keep girls in relationships where they are not safe. Yes. I also wanted to, this one I told somebody I know very recently. I said, I noticed that when women are in very unfortunate situations, they make this sentence: if he doesn't want me again, let him tell me. You not. He's done 1,001 things to show you he doesn't want you. Why are you waiting for him to say it? If a man doesn't want you, he takes a walk. And the way they take a walk, they get someone else, they start to do something. So why are you struggling with, he needs to tell me? No. You need to love yourself enough to say, something is not adding up. And then I also feel that if there's some people that God is telling them to walk, but they think that God can't tell them that. And so they doubt the very voice that is saying, here is not safe for you anymore. So I really want to wrap up this series with this particular video. And I'm going to talk about 4 points. I'm going to try to put it into the 3 minutes mark. And I think I've done well with this so far. So number one, the last batch now. So the first thing I'm talking about today in this video is we are not telling our daughters how to identify problematic patterns. Problematic patterns, whether it's with in-laws, with finances, with communication, with sex, we need to talk about it. So that when they identify problematic patterns, they know that it's not always a function of what they did or didn't do, their personality, their fault, their nagging or not. They will know when this is a problem. and they can know how to remove themselves. Number 2, we need to teach our girls what to do when they find problematic situations. How can a woman be going through domestic abuse and didn't know to tell her mom? Didn't want to tell her mom because he didn't want it to look like this. Because sometimes the mom had always told her that there was something wrong in the relationship. So she feels like, I don't want to prove mommy wrong. I broke her heart. I don't want to. Let your children know that mommy is here. Love is here. Even if I had told you before and you disobeyed me, when you walk into something that's problematic, mommy's love for you is constant. Sometimes girls are staying back in problematic relationships because they have a sister whose marriage is more stable and they don't want to prove that theirs is not working. So bring it up and let your daughters know. Even if you think other people's marriages are working but yours has a problem, come home, come to me, let's talk about it. Don't blame yourself. Don't stay longer than you should. Whether it's a dating relationship, because even all this talk we're talking about Henrietta, were there signs she ignored at the beginning? So instead of telling her, you guys look so good together, can you tell her, it's great until you see these signs. When you see these signs, you don't need to go ahead. I want to be able to tell my daughters that even right on the day of the wedding, if you're not sure, there's room to leave. Forget about all the people I've invited. Forget about the money I've spent. If you don't feel safe, let's talk about it. Number 3 error for today, as I wrap this series, is we keep teaching our girls to follow feelings instead of patterns. Human beings are patterns. There's something Oprah Winfrey always says. She said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. That's something you want to teach your child. If a man does not respect her in a context, she needs to understand that he won't in subsequent contexts. And it doesn't always mean when they show you who they are, you walk away. If a man shows you who he is in a particular way and you address it as a single, say, oh, I don't like to be spoken to like that, then you've set a precedent and adjustment can be made. But even at that, it's still very tricky. Then finally, we need to teach our girls about financial abuse. So maybe let me do another video about financial abuse, but tell me what you learned in this video. I promise you, final. Let's talk about financial abuse. So many of us parents are so eager to talk to our girls about moments where they're going to marry someone who will be able to take care of them. Sometimes they're building together. So there may not be anybody that is really taking care of anyone overwhelmingly like that at that onset. Everyone is building. However, there are behaviors that we should point out to our daughters that could be financial abuse. One of it is imposing on her not to work, but failing to provide adequately, giving her just enough to meet certain things, and meeting guys who have those ideologies that don't make her too powerful, don't give her money. That's financial abuse. You need to talk about it. Number 2, so she works in an organization, she has access to credit, and her husband tells her to go get credit. He needs to match it with his own prudence. Oh, baby, could you go through your cooperative, borrow this money for me, see how I'm going to pay back? I have this money in Piggyverse, it comes out on so time, I do this business, I do that. How can we bring in logic and accountability into financial conversations so that we don't use love to overwhelm it? And this could go both ways. So sometimes some women will get money from their husbands and say, oh, they want to do business, and they say it's a loan. Maybe he took the money elsewhere and gave to her. Now she say, I'm your wife, how can you ask me to pay back? No. We need to have homes where there's a culture of prudence and accountability when it comes to finances, because if one person put their name on the line, you're creating unnecessary stress on them. It's different if you say, baby, this money you borrowed from me, I would need you to support me in paying a part of it. So this is how I'll pay my part, this is how you, so that I say, okay, sure, I can contribute this, but you're not manipulating them. Now, if I've said this, you can imagine what it means for a spouse to borrow money and not pay, to want to usurp in your business. No. Teach your daughters about how your marriage is great, but if you have a personal business you run, there are boundaries. And this goes both ways. So you married a guy that runs a business. Now you want to run the business. You want to be able to pull money from anywhere in that business. You're going to kill that business. You're going to destroy that business. And it goes either way. She has a business, maybe she has a big salon, and then marries this guy. The guy starts to usurp, starts to go into the wallet because he's now married to her. No, they need to sit down and talk about how this is going to work. They need to sit down and talk about how, what do you have access to? Are you a part of my business or not? I mean, and then They need to marry people that feel comfortable having these conversations about boundaries and terms for the purpose of growth. So I've been doing this series to just help all of us raising girls to make adjustments. Have you learned anything through this series? I'm happy to hear your perspective. Please share in the comments.